Hi, everyone. This is Phil Travis, and this presentation um, involves a discussion of the three Islamic empires that rose to dominance in their respective region um, at the same time in which we in class have been watching Europe come out of the Middle Ages into the Renaissance into the Enlightenment period. And these three empires, the longest lasting, of course, in the red is the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire only collapsed officially, at least, at the end of World War One. Though the shaded area in red is the height of the empire, and during World War One, there was far less of this territory under control as the empire had weakened substantially. So the Ottoman Empire, the Safavid Empire, which was centered largely in modern-day Iran, and the Mughal dynasty or Mughal Empire that was centered in modern-day India, Pakistan, and parts of Afghanistan. These empires are all very interesting and unique, and so this is what we'll be looking at in this presentation. Now, as you see pictured here, this is a map, a closer map of the Safavid Empire. You can see that it embodies, it's located, its heart is in modern-day Persia, or what we call Iran today, and the capital was, for the most of the time, at Isfahan, which is centrally located, as you should be able to see on this map, in modern-day Iran or Persia. Now, there's an interesting development here because today, if you follow anything and you understand anything about Islam in the world today, you know that there's a number of sectarian divisions, most notably the division between Sunni and Shia. And it's really at this time where you see the Sunni and Shia division really creating differences and even hostilities between different Islamic groups or different Islamic empires. The Safavid Empire was a Shia empire. And just as today, Iran is a Shia majority country. The Safavid was a Shia majority realm, and they believed in something called Twelver Shiism, which was a mystical understanding of the Islamic faith. By contrast, their rival, particularly the Ottoman Empire, was primarily Sunni in nature and more less interested. The Ottoman were less interested in things like magic or the supernatural than they were expanding the realm of the Ottoman Empire. But you see this division between Sunni and Shia, which is a division that goes all the way back to the 7th century, but you really see it forming the basis for some of the disputes between Islamic groups during the period of the Safavid and the Ottoman Empire. This is a look at, this is Safavid art from Isfahan. You'll notice they were incredibly good horsemen, and they used compound bows in battle, which was very effective for a period. This is a mosque at Isfahan today. This is a Safavid mosque, and you can get a look at this and really get a feel for the intricacy of the artwork here. One of the other dynasties is the interesting dynasty is the one in modern-day India. This was the Mughal dynasty. The Mughal dynasty, which was actually one of the first dynasties to employ gunpowder weapons. They actually were so one of the first peoples to adopt the usage of matchlock gunpowder weapons, firearms. Now, the Safavid, by contrast, the Safavid would refuse to use gunpowder weapons often because they believed it was unmanly and it was not sophisticated. And so the Safavid were dealt some crushing defeats, particularly at the hands of the Ottomans, largely because of their refusal to adopt the use of firearms. Instead, they turned to mysticism to try to protect themselves from bullets, which of course did not work too well. But the Mughal did advance. They did use advanced gunpowder technology early on. The Mughal dynasty was actually, this is a depiction, as you see right there, this is a depiction of Babur in battle. Babur was the founder of the Mughal dynasty, and you'll notice in this, if you look at this, you'll notice the compound bow, which was an integral element to Mughal warfare. And Babur and the Mughals were descendants of the Mongols. So much of the equestrian skills and the usage of the compound bow were still widespread. And they were very, very effective warriors. And they controlled Afghanistan, northern India, and ultimately much of the entirety of the Indian subcontinent was controlled by the Mughals. Now, some of the greatest leaders in the Mughal dynasty were individuals like Babur and Akbar, but actually the most impressive architectural development of the Mughal was the Taj Mahal, which was built by Shah Jahan. And he built this for his wife, and interestingly, Jahan was actually imprisoned by his son, Aurangzeb, who became perhaps the greatest of the Mughal leaders. The politics in the Islamic empires, you might immediately say, wow, he imprisoned his dad. The politics in these empires was very cutthroat. There was no process for which authority was passed through. Instead, when a king died, there was oftentimes a great deal of infighting and struggle to try and maintain political power. And so it was very common in these empires for powerful warriors to overthrow a leader. And Shah Jahan was overthrown. He was thrown in jail. And apparently he could see the Taj Mahal, which he built for his wife, from a small cell. But he spent the remainder of his life in prison because he was ousted as a leader. There were other leaders, like in the Ottoman, who went to great lengths to eliminate, to isolate, or even kill other competitors who could even be family members, competitors to the throne. So they were very, very, very ruthless when it came to obtaining and maintaining political and military power. Akbar the Great, who's pictured in the blue background with the lion, Akbar the Great, he was the grandson of Babur. Babur is the founder of the Mughal dynasty. Akbar was one of the great leaders of the Mughal, and his father was not necessarily so. His father's pictured in the green there. And in fact, his father was blamed for losing much of the empire. But Akbar, by contrast, expanded the empire and was noted for his religious tolerance. He accepted the presence of Hinduism, Sikhism, Christianity, Buddhism, and also, of course, Islam. And actually, at one time, Akbar even tried to create his own religion, which was like a fusion of these different faiths on the Indian subcontinent. And it could be said that he was considered probably the most noble and the greatest of the leaders of the Mughal dynasty, overseeing it really at its peak. Now, to get to the last one, this is just general overviews, of course, but the Ottoman Empire, and basically what you see on this map, all of the colored area. If you go to the extent of all the colored area, that represents the full extent of the Ottoman dynasty, the Ottoman Empire, which was an incredibly long-lived and powerful empire. It lasted, like I said, it did not collapse technically until the end of World War I. Of course, at the end of World War I, there was not much left of the empire. This kind of height of territorial expansion, was of course not something that could last for a very long time. And ultimately, when the Ottoman Empire did decline, it came so largely at the control and influence of European powers particularly in the 1800s. This is a look. I'm trying to show you guys a good amount of art and architecture from these dynasties. And this right here is the Hagia Sophia. It's a mosque today. It's located in Istanbul. It was originally a church built by the Byzantine Emperor Justinian, and it was built in the 6th century. Justinian, the Byzantine was an Orthodox Christian kingdom that was really a continuation of the Roman Empire and remained intact from its center at Constantinople until 1453, when the Sultan Mehmed II conquered Constantinople in one of the most significant or landmark moments in world history. But here it is, and it's massive. The domes on the structure here are absolutely massive, and actually, during Justinian's time, the main dome was a true marvel of engineering. This is the Blue Mosque, which is also located in Istanbul. Another example of Ottoman architecture. And of course, the mosques, you notice, have the so-called prayer towers around the corners are called minarets. And the minarets are always the case with these major mosques in the former Islamic empires. Minarets are a very identifying piece of structure. The founder of the Ottoman Empire was a guy named Osman Bey, and he's in this painting here. Osman Bey, as you can tell, he's got his hand on his sword. He was Osman Bey. Bey means chief, and Osman was what was called a Ghazi, who's a religious leader who sought to extend the power and influence of Islam in the modern world by force of sword. And so he was a religious warrior, if you will. This is Mehmed II, Sultan Mehmed II, and he's probably the greatest of the sultans, of the rulers, as he was the ruler following the conquest of Constantinople, which was, of course, renamed Istanbul. And he continued the expansion of the Ottoman power well into southeastern Europe and the Mediterranean, as well as the Crimea. And today there are Muslim populations in the Balkans, for example, and it was during the time of the Ottomans where you have the movement of Islam as a religious faith into southeastern Europe. And of course, Islamic countries like Bosnia in southeastern Europe today are certainly evidence of the movement of Islam at this time. Now, Mehmed II really expanded the Ottoman Empire's realm. The Ottoman Empire was the most expansive and long-lasting of the Islamic empires. It was absolutely, for the longest period of time, the most powerful empire. And actually, the Ottomans, who didn't really have that much of a navy, had even put together a navy by obtaining conscripted pirates and seized vessels. And they actually pushed into the Mediterranean, and it was at the Battle of Lepanto on October 7th, 1571, where Mehmed II's expansion was held in check by European powers. Particularly the forces of, at that time, the very powerful city-state of Venice and Spain's powerful king, Philip II. The Battle of Lepanto was the moment in which the Ottoman Turks' expansion into European areas was really halted. Some of the most, and this really speaks to the influence of the Ottoman in Europe, some of the most effective and loyal and well-armed of the Ottoman troops, if you would think the almost like the most highly specialized and most gung-ho of the Ottoman troops were actually called the Janissaries, and they were actually from Southeastern European Christian families, and they were actually had been taken from their families from Turkish raids into Southeastern Europe, and they were brought up as children in the Ottoman court. They were brought up to be devoted to Islam, to be exceptional soldiers and administrators, and courageous and well armed. So they were individuals that were effectively removed from their families and brought up under the tutelage and leadership of the Ottoman sultanates. And so they were able to mold them into this effective and crack fighting force called the Janissaries, pictured here with early era firearms, and they would have used these to great effect. And one of the places they would have actually used those firearms to great effect would have been in the Battle of Calderon, which was in 1514. And this battle was fought between, so we had of course, this is going back a little bit because it's a little bit, we talked about 1571 just a second ago, but we go back just a little bit to 1514. The Ottomans were not only struggling against Europeans and seeking to expand their control and power into Europe, but also against the other Islamic empire to its east, which of course was the Safavid. And at the Battle of Calderon in 1514, this was a major, major battle. It's up near the tip of Iran, near the border with Turkey and Armenia. See the Safavid map, by the way. Go back after we're done here. But this was a case in which the Shiite Safavids and the Sunni Ottomans fought. And the Ottomans really, really routed the Safavids, largely because the Safavids, were refusing to use gunpowder weapons and were instead attempting to appeal to magic through their religious faith to protect them, which of course did not work. The Ottomans were very concerned over the spread of what was called Twelver Shi'ism, which was a mystical form of Shia Islam. And they believed that Shia Islamic faith posed a threat to stability in the very different in Sunni Ottoman realm, and they were trying to prevent the spread of it. And so you look back here and you can really see the origins of some of these very, very ancient differences between Shia and Sunni. And of course, we're very aware of these sectarian divides that still exist today in the region.